What's up everyone, Ains here from Season Gaming, and today I'm going to be giving you my final review of the SCUF Vantage controller for the PlayStation 4. Now if you missed it previously, I did a full unboxing of the controller here next to me that is now in pieces, along with a very extensive kind of early impressions. So I will link that video right here somewhere, and I would suggest you watch that before watching this because this is going to be a shorter, more direct video just talking about my final verdict on the SCUF after playing with it for the past week or so and comparing it directly as well with the Nacon Revolution Pro controller, which I have here and I've been using since last year. So I'm going to just jump right into it. As you can see, I've got the controller kind of in pieces next to me. The first thing I'm going to say is that out of the box, I was not a big fan of this controller. I wasn't too sold on the build quality. Some of the plastics feel cheap. I didn't really like these S1 and S2 buttons, which we'll get to. I thought they were kind of meaningless. I wasn't huge on the thumbstick design. The weight of the controller, it's very light, especially without the vibration modules. And just a few other things. Like when I first unboxed it, I said it felt kind of good in my hands, but as I kind of, a few minutes into it, started playing around with it, I really didn't like it too much. As the week went on, and I started to play with some of these various attachments, and I'll show you quickly here how you kind of modify this controller in various ways, it really grew on me. And in fact, it grew on me so much that now I'm thinking about using it as my primary controller and getting rid of the Nacon. So I'm kind of still on the fence, but let me just show you quickly some of the modifications that you can do with this controller and why I think they're important, because it's really what sold me on a lot of aspects. So first up, as you can see, you take off the faceplate here, which I showed in my early unboxing. These are able to be purchased. You can buy blue and green and red and other colors, and you can modify these friction rings in here as well. In fact, there's a couple extra, I don't know where I put them now, I think they're in here, yes. A couple extra black ones if you don't like the yellow right out of the box. Once you take it off here, here's your outer shell. So you've got your vibration modules here, which lock in and out, and they add a lot of weight to the controller. I typically turn vibration off in games, so I took these out initially, but it made the controller feel so light. Now I know some people like the feel of a light controller, so it's easy to kind of toss around in your hands. It doesn't feel like you get weighted down. I don't. I like a heavier controller, something that feels sturdy in my hands. And the vibration modules, when you put them back in, at least, and they snap in and out just like that, they add a lot of weight to it. And so now that I'm using it, I'm keeping them in. The S1 and S2 buttons, these are here. They're these tiny little side buttons that go on the side of the controller, and they snap in and out pretty easily. There you go, done. And they can be aligned. You basically hold them down and you can program them to replace any of your other functions on the buttons for quick access on the left and right. I will say I hold the controller pretty, I kind of wrap my hands around it fully, and what I was finding, as you can see right here, is the side of my finger was bumping it on occasion. And I just know if I switch that to some sort of critical function, it's going to get bumped repeatedly, and I am not a fan of that. I also just don't see a need for having them on the side, so I've taken them off, which again is one of the great things about this controller, and I think one of the things you'll hear me touch on repeatedly is how customizable it is. Let's talk about the thumbsticks. The thumbsticks, in my opinion, are probably the most important thing of a controller. They're the reason I originally upgraded to the Nacon, which I'll get to, is that as I said in my early impressions, I prefer the offset thumbsticks. I also really like the material that SCUF uses on these thumbsticks, as it's very grippy, and I like that it's concave, so your thumb sits inside of it. Now when I first looked at these, as you can see here, I've taken off the shallow thumbstick on the aiming or the right joystick, and I've put on the extended one that comes with the package here. Initially I said I wasn't a big fan of it because, as you can see, these are domed or convex, which I'm not a fan of. I really prefer for my thumb to sit in there. However, once you have this on and you get that extended length, and with the grippiness of the material itself, this motion is a lot better than the default short thumbstick, substantially so. much more in line with what I've gotten used to with the Nacon, because the Nacon has slightly extended thumbsticks, which you can see here, especially over the standard DualShock 4. And it just gives you a better range of motion, especially for shooters. If you're someone that's really tight on your aiming thumbstick and likes really close precision, that's hugely important. I can't overstate that enough. On my Xbox, on the Elite, I used the long aiming thumbstick, and I've gotten used to it on my PlayStation with the Nacon, and so it was really important that SCUF get it right with this right thumbstick. And after using it for a week and playing a lot of games, quick games like Spider-Man or things where you have to spin around, I'm happy to say, or pleased to say, that this suffices and it feels really nice. So good news there. The D-pad. The D-pad is interchangeable. It initially comes with this plain plastic, four-way that you would expect. SCUF also included this rounded D-pad, which you actually put on after the faceplate. So what you would do is you put this on like this, snaps into place, and then this is magnetic, very, very similar to the Xbox Elite controller. In fact, kind of all over you can see where SCUF looked at the Xbox Elite controller and has learned a few things anyway from it. I'm not going to say they copied it. But this snaps right into place just like it does on the Elite. And I really like this a lot. So the standard four-way is very stiff. And the action here on the D-pad is very stiff as well. But when you have this flat plate, and with the grippiness of this material, which is the same material used on the thumbsticks, this gives you a real nice 8-way action, which you can actually feel under your thumb. And it's still very easy, because of how stiff it is, to hit 4-way directions as well, even with this disc. So I'm now a big fan of that as well. That has won me over as well. I talked before about the length of the triggers on the DualShock 4. Not a big fan of the DualShock 4 hardly in any way, as I mentioned before. Now, when you initially get this controller, it comes with these, which are very slightly extended over your standard DualShock 4, which I talked about. But it comes with these really long extended extra ones, and these snap on and off easily as well. You basically just do this. And there you have it. So what you can do is, just showing you here, is you snap the standard one back on, and they snap on and off easily, like I said, is you can really see the difference between the one that comes on the controller, which is very similar to the standard DualShock 4, slightly longer, which is nice, and then these really extended ones. And the beauty of these, which you can kind of see there, is that they are ridged in two different places. So when your hand wraps around here, you can either rest it here in a short throw, or if you want to extend your hand fully, which I like to do, you can rest it on the long throw. And that little addition there is more brilliant than I can stress. It just, let me take this one back off and I'll show you exactly what I mean here. So again, I've mentioned before, longer hands, longer fingers. Now I have a longer thumbstick, which gives me all the aiming precision that you like in games. And when you bring these triggers up, you're not pulling your fingers back and trying to squeeze them into this small frame. It's already a bigger frame than the DualShock 4, and now as you can see, my fingers can fully extend, and I have no problem just banging these triggers out. So this combination between the size of the controller, the changing out of the thumbsticks, the radial D-pad, and then giving me these extensions, world of difference. I mean, this is absolute night and day. If you're a serious gamer, and serious may not be the right word, but if you're someone who really kind of gets into the fine feeling of playing a game and really nailing things, whether it's like God of War when you're nailing combos, Spider-Man flying around the world, or any of the competitive shooters, these little differences make a world of difference. And now that I've kind of customized this and played around with it a lot over the week, I've really come to love this controller. A few other things you haven't heard me mention are these paddles. So initially, in my impressions, I said I'm not a big fan of paddles. I don't use them on my Elite controller. And I didn't really dig them too much on this either. However, as you can see right now, I have two in and I have two out. The inner one's out. The reason being is that when I hold this controller, I hold it like this. So my fingers sit right on these paddles. And so what I found is that if you use it for something like reloading a gun in a shooter, it's actually very, very handy because I don't have to take my thumb off the thumbstick. So for instance, I'm running around and shooting, you know, like this, and I can just click this left button or left trigger behind here instead of coming off to hit square to reload. And so that's really neat, and it's something that I think I'll actually get use of where I haven't used it before. But it's really because of this design and the ergonomics of this paddle that I'm able to do that. My hands just don't feel right on the Nacon ones, nor really on the Xbox Elite ones. I've never really used them, like I said. So the ability to take these on and off is nice as well. So if I'm not using them, you know, I can either rest my finger on them and just not attach them to any button, or you can just pop them right off. They come off very, very easily. Which, as I say that, of course, they won't. There you go. And you just turn it off and they pop out. They basically snap and lock into place. So, you know, as I've played around with this more this week, sorry, I was just making sure I had that right. As I've played around with this over the past week, I've really come to like this controller. I have not played around too much with the headset controls. I don't traditionally use a headset because I run with a home theater here, and so I usually just use a chat thing. But as I mentioned before, you can play this wired or Bluetooth. This is the wireless one. I've had no problems with that. After you do your initial connection, it's worked wonderfully. And then you can also plug in here and use this as kind of your volume bar or light bar. Like I said, I haven't played around with that too much, but it's a simple functionality, so I don't really see any issue with it. Not too much else to mention with the controller. Like I said, I think my only really complaint with it is that some of the plastics feel a little cheaper. I wish they would have gone with a better casing here. I also don't really care too great for the button design. I don't know if you can see this clearly, but the buttons on the SCUF here are a lot smaller and further apart. You can see that if you look at them side by side with the Nacon and the SCUF. The Nacon has bigger, flatter buttons, which I covered in my review of this controller, and I like that feeling of being close to each other so that you can just jump quickly. You don't really have to move your thumb too much to go button to button, whereas on the SCUF, not only is it a smaller button, but it's a bigger gap between them. So some people may like that. I personally don't, but it's not really a deal breaker for me in that regard. Other than that, I'm really liking this controller. Is it worth $200? It's a big if. I would think if you're really into PlayStation, you really like to, you know, you get a lot of play out of it, and you spend a lot of time on it, and you want a wireless controller that'll give you some customization options, I would say yes. I think it is. If you're not all of those things, you don't plan on customizing it, you're comfortable with the DualShock 4, some other aftermarket controller that's cheaper, I don't know if you're going to get the value out of this controller, and it'll be worth the $200 for you to get it. I think it's a personal decision. For me personally, I think now that I've really played around with it, customized it, I think I'm probably going to keep it. And one of the nice things to keep in mind versus, say, the DualShock 4 or even the Nacon here is that all of these pieces, the D-pad, the thumbsticks, the friction rings, the triggers, they're all interchangeable, right? So even beyond your color customization, which I don't really care for, as these thumbsticks break down, or these materials break down, or they get a little, you know, loose, or the material rubs off, or just any of the things that happen over time with your controller, you can change them out on this, which is nice. You can keep it fresh, you can keep it new. DualShock 4s, as you know, you obviously can't do that, and even with the Nacon here, while it's got higher grade materials and, you know, is a better quality material overall, as these thumbsticks wear down, and this left thumbstick has worn down since I've been using it for the past 18 months or so, I can't replace them. I'm going to have to get a new controller again. So combined with, like I said, some of the other features of this controller, I really do like it. Now, a one-to-one comparison with the Nacon, I think on the Nacon side, which I still really like, I like the fact that some of this movement is very smooth. It's a different kind of material. There's a metal stick here. I like the button design, like I said. I also like that the Nacon comes with customizable software, which I covered in my review of it, which I'll link here at the end of this video if you want to see this one as well. And you can set up custom profiles. So the Nacon still has a lot going for it. But with the customization, I like the shape of this controller better. I don't know if you can see it, but the Nacon is kind of taller and more narrow, whereas this is more like almost like a widened DualShock 4. It's got the same look and feel, but it's a little wider, a little broader, like I said previously. I love the fact of these extended triggers. They just, you know, I keep going on about them because I like them so much. And I love that I can change out these thumbsticks to suit my to suit how I like to play. So at the end of the day, I really do like the SCUF. I've enjoyed my time with it this week. If you have the means and you get a lot of play out of your PS4, or you're a competitive player, or you're just like customizing colors and everything else with your controller, this is definitely a good option. Again, it's $170 for the wired version. This is the Bluetooth version, which is $200. Bluetooth works really well, so it's nice having a full aftermarket PS4 controller that is wireless and customizable. So if you have any questions, anything I didn't answer, please let me know in the comments. Otherwise, I'll link to the Nacon review and my early unboxing and early impressions of the SCUF as well. As always, thank you very much for tuning into Seasoned Gaming. We'll see you next time.